Welcome, 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 everyone, to another adventure into reality. Today, I am joined once again by the intrepid explorer, Martina Grubmueller, my intrepid mentorship student. Welcome back from our three-part Orchestra of Consciousness series. And today, we're going to be talking about language. Welcome, Martina, to the show.
Yeah, thanks. Hi. Good to be here.
Well, uniqueness. We are here to talk about the nature of language, spiritual, seen, unseen, and everything that's around that. So, everyone that is currently listening, you all know language, right? Go on to that chat room and type, yes, I know language. No, I don't know language. Martina, what is the nature of language you want to explore first?
Well, I want to actually read one sentence that I've just read this book, and this book has triggered our conversation. And I'm just going to show this book, and it's just triggered a few of those questions. It's not easy to read. It's Steven Pinker, The Language Instinct. But what he says, there's a sentence in this book, and it says, "Words make noise. Thoughts are trapped in the head of the thinker. As the mind expands with new concept, we need new words." And I thought, for me, I love words, I love language. And, that sentence by itself makes it worthwhile just talk about language a little bit, isn't it? And we can take it anywhere. So to answer to your question, to start off with, I'd actually like to find out a little bit more about what is the language part of the human biology? Is it part of the 20% DNA technology that we always talk about?
No, it's consciousness in DNA experience that is using light to be converted into sound that is then observed by perceiving consciousness and a perceiving and DNA instrument of experiments that perceiving it as sound that is converted into light that's stored in memories. So it is consciousness in the interactive format within the DNA instrument of experience, using it to perceive suddenly, interpret suddenly, and store long-term and short-term. So the patterns of language are an encodement that can compact all sorts of other concepts behind it. And that encodement, everyone learns differently. Language is technically part of that 20% of DNA, but it is more like a learned aspect of it. There are many people who know multiple languages, and after a while, you think in one language, or when you're trying to process the new language, you think in English to talk in German until such a time you become fluent, and then you go to think in German and talk in German, so on and so forth. And then there are those people that are the next level linguistics, that's 6, 7, 8 languages. And they don't understand language is your consciousness. When you switch from one language to the next, it's easily observable within inside yourself. No, for those that are single language, it is a little harder for them to perceive how consciousness itself is the language of not just communication, emotional communication, physical communication, pain, fear, so on and so forth, until you read it's evolved enough till language became written, and written is perceived another way. That is a light being who's storing their information in ink that is held over hundreds or thousands of years, that's then being perceived as light again.
Okay. So basically we could say that if it's consciousness and beyond that, we can say language is a choice beyond cognition.
Yes, it is the currency, like in energy. Language is the current energy. So let's say there's voltage going through a line. That current going through the line is the language.
Yeah, it's a medium to express oneself, isn't it?
Yeah, but then there are times that there can be many currents going back and forth, like in an opera, where they're singing and dancing and all those other things that are accentuating and punctuating and making the language far more interpretive.
Would you say that is part of the harmony, the harmonics of the voice itself?
Through, let's say in an opera state, let's say they're in a dancing, singing format with a chorus, there's far more than just that going on. There's the interpretation of the chorus, the alignment of the music, the iambic parameter of the lyrics itself.
And of course, the resonance of the voices and everything, isn't it? So,
correct, yeah.
Because this is it, isn't it? Voice and the expression, the resonance of the spoken word is part of the language. Yep. So it's not just how we're putting the syntax together and one word after the next and whatever. It's actually much more than that. And I think that's what we want to actually look at today.
Right. So syntax is unique. As you were just saying, when we think in perfect sentences. But there was a time when we were learning languages, we didn't think in perfect sentences, but it all made sense in our head. And this is where the light of our mind, that's in the pureness of our consciousness, knows what it's trying to say. Mm-hmm. And it translate it from light into sound accurately.
Mm-hmm. You know, this is fascinating for me because I wrote my book a little bit like that, because I wrote it from it was like a genius writing course that I did. And I tried to really force myself to write it from a non-cognitive place. And we're talking about syntax and sense. That there is one phrase in this book, which I absolutely love. And they say it's colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Absolutely love it. Makes no sense whatsoever. And it just feels so good. So what is that? Syntax.
The light has been modified by the intonation process to create more light.
Okay.
So let's say Martin Luther King, I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream. Mm-hmm. Taken out of context, it's I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream. Taken in context, I have a dream for a unified world. Mm. Okay. Syntax, when used correctly, allows the natural intonation process to create these flashes of light that will then create more flashes of light in response. Mm.
So can we say that, you know, when we talk about language, even if you read something and it really speaks to you, it doesn't have to make sense. You can actually perceive it in light memory, not in chemical memory. Can we say that? Does that make sense?
Yes, because there are many texts that have jumped generations, if not thousands of generations. We live in a world of quotes, right? How many quotes from 2,000 years ago still relative to today? Lots and lots and lots. And how many quotes jump generations, or how music jumps generations? Why has Pink Floyd and Metallica jumped generations? Because they were great performers and their music was transformative and it has the power to transmute generations of time.
So is that when we talk about the light encoded memories that we decipher and decode? This is where it is, you know, superluminal thinking comes in and all of that.
Right. Because behind the words in the quote is the consciousness that created them and all the other consciousness that have used them and reused them to make an impact. Our technically, you could call our libraries the uncollected collective. Even though they're collected into one place and in here put into a Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah.
Before they were put on the internet, etc.
Yeah. This is also why last time you were talking in one of the shows, you were talking about reading a book. And as you read a book, whatever book that is, you're getting so much more than just the words. You're getting the author, you're getting the printer, you're getting all of that.
The cognition of creation.
Exactly. So, okay, so code, a set of rules to translate between third and words, generative grammar. Okay, and grammar, it has nothing to do with what you learned at school, you know, punctuation and how to put words together. It's actually how sentences flow, words flow together to create that sensation, basically.
So grammar. Now, when I was young and taking reading classes, they made us diagram sentences. And this was the disaster of my learning career as a young kid. Does anyone have to remember diagramming sentences? Because I thought so differently. I could not use diagramming. I'm like, this just makes zero sense.
So give us an example. What is diagramming?
Diagramming is breaking the verb, the noun, the pronoun, the position and placement, so you understand the mathematics of creating a sentence
Yes.
in English at that particular time.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go down like this. This is the adverb. This is the verb. And then you had to do multiple sentences at a time. And to me, I was saying exactly what the same thing was saying. It's just I didn't do it the way that the teacher was describing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But once I understood it, did it make me a better writer? No.
Mm-hmm.
It just made me know a form that many other people were familiar with that made it easier for them to understand at times. But it didn't mean they didn't understand what I wrote.
I think it's also part of the education system. It's much easier to teach it, because how do you teach it otherwise, isn't it?
Correct, which is the nature of language. How do you teach children language? Well, technically, spatial awareness is language.
And they started doing that when I remember learning every letter first, A, B, C, D, and then putting the words together and reading by adding the letters, reading that was the old way of doing it. And then my daughter already started learning spatial. She just looked, and I thought, how's she ever gonna be able to learn this? She's looking at pictures and making it up, basically. So they learn from a different perspective.
Yeah. And then once they take spatial awareness, the spatial positioning of the letters that create words doesn't need to be a rote mathematical formula that still has the power of cognition behind it. This is why grammar and syntax are the consciousness's way of adding a lot more intuitive wisdom into the statement itself, adding more to the code.
Adding more to the code, yes.
Right.
So I've got written down, because I'm working off my sheet here of the question, does this code we're talking about resemble anything, the DNA code?
Visually, no. But when you look at things, letters in waveform, sound waveform, you can see patterns that look like the DNA intertwinement on its side. Yes. Does it make it DNA? Technically, when we're talking, are we exchanging DNA?
Yes.
So then, yes, we're exchanging light at this higher perspective level. Does my words change your DNA?
Yes.
Do your words change my DNA?
I hope so.
Are there people whose DNA is not changed from words?
Yes. DNA changes through the observation, through the interconnection, no?
Sure, but what does the change mean?
Well,
everyone allows a different layer of change. That's why there's certain phrases that can put a shock to a person's system and send them down a whole nother track of observation and understanding that is far more enlightening for them, or down a darker path.
Yeah, and that's got nothing to, that's not a level of cognition again, that's a level of receiving.
Correct.
No barriers, just, lack of programs, if you wish, lack of emotional stagnation.
So I'll use an example. I say the word no. All the interpretations are behind it. And then I go, what part of no do you not understand, the N or the O?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. What part of yes did you understand, the Y, the E, or the S?
Yeah.
Or did you combine all of it as the intonation process and all the encodement that's behind the yes and the no?
And that again comes with the tone, the way you say,
right. And then there's Jamie,
the frequency.
Right. And then Jamie put in abracadabra. That's myth. We had myth to a whole different process of language. And then the subsequent trees of energy that are around myth and how we empower them.
So you just said, okay, so you just mentioned the word tree, which I found quite interesting too, because there's a difference if you consider language as a chain of words, or as you consider it as a tree.
Both.
Give us a bit of an idea of the two different metaphors, because for me that's very exciting. I'm not quite sure why.
So let's say a quote like I have a dream. That's a chain leading you somewhere. It may have trees around it, but it's getting you someplace laser specific. And then we'll use the myth, abracadabra, something opens, and all the tree of information that's attached to the mythical possibilities of the potentiality of the word.
Right. And is there also something like, I was thinking maybe in terms of when, as you use the language, you're actually creating roots almost. You're obviously creating new thoughts and new understandings, new concepts for other people. That has that.
We've been going for 15 minutes now. Turn on your psychic skill and see all the roots we've created in 15 minutes of words.
Crazy, yeah.
Okay. Now look for the chains.
Yeah, I see more roots at this stage.
Because we're creating something that we know is going to go 2 hours. Roots are context. Chains help us get to the conclusion of what all the context means.
Okay, so that's a lovely way of looking at it.
Yeah.
That's a lovely way of looking. And that's really, yeah, so that's really using the language cognitively as a tree rather than just, well, it depends. It depends what situation you're in, what you want to achieve. I get that.
Do you and I know where we'll be on the last minute of the show? No. Our language does, though.
Say this again.
You and I may not know, but the language knows.
So the language has its own consciousness.
Which is us in free flow. Not even though we're timed for the show, it's there is no time in the consciousness back and forth language creation progression of what we're creating. You and I don't. First of all, you and I don't have stage fright, so there's not this constant pause of the back and forth. There's a flow there. Yeah,
and also we are open to going to the edge of the unknowingness. I mean, we don't necessarily. I've got a couple of questions, but I have no idea what we're going to talk about.
Right. So we're in that state of unknowingness, allow knowingness to flow through with simplistic ease.
Yes. So going back to this technology, language being technology and all of that, I just want to, in this book was mentioned the Williams syndrome, which is a rare form of retardation, a defective gene chromosome, I think 11, calcium, connected to calcium or something. But anyway, so what he said there was that children who have that very rare syndrome have a huge menagerie of words. They're much better conversationalists, even though they don't cognitively understand. They have a completely different array of words, actually, than, like animals, like this is a dog, this is a cat. I mean, they come up with all sorts of interesting, and that just comes from where? They picked that up. They must have picked it up somehow.
So let's use the frame of the child. If they're in a learning state and they're exploring words, places, and positions, oftentimes their strategy, let's say it's at a time where they're having dinner and they know that they have focus coming from the parents versus sitting at home and mom listening in the distance. So there's a strategy behind the placement of the words as kids cognitively understand placement, position, and timing too. But then there are those children that are those self-learners who are 4, 5, and 6 and can read really well and read books way above their educational level. And then those words begin to seep into their everyday language. And mom and dad are like, how do you know those words?
Yeah.
Because the language in the light in the text still reflected something on to the supra genius that exists within language and enunciation itself. Because when you hit an enunciation perfect, it creates a euphoric feeling within you.
Yeah.
Now, Martina, you've learned many languages, so you've had moments where you've been so confident in your language, there's an actual dopamine journey behind owning that fluent form.
Yeah.
So children are looking for the dopamine release of perfect placement of words, even they may not know what they mean, but they know when to try to use it from the context in which they first experienced it.
Yeah. And I think this is part of that because of this Williams syndrome. There is no cognitive barrier, you know.
Correct.
Because of the level of retardation, if you, or whatever, I don't know if you're even allowed to say this, you know, this word, or defective gene, you know, that's what there is absolutely no barrier, and all of those sensations can be created automatically. And this is where the memory is, where the language is the instinct then, isn't it?
It's also pattern recognition.
Pattern
So
recognition.
a child is listening long before they're speaking.
Yeah.
This is where science in the book, it just needs the next level of understanding spirit and the observation energy that the child is going through even before birth. So.
Okay, so let's talk about this, and let's ask the question: does thought? Next question: does thought create language, or language create thought?
Consciousness creates all of that. So once again, we're stuck in a scientific loop of their thesosis that's unprovable within their own thesosis. So consciousness creates all of that, and there are subsections within language and the conversation of language that allows consciousness to have many different forms of expression. A thought in a conversation is fluid. I don't know what I'm going to say next, but I have an intention behind my continuing conversation with you that maintains consciousness state of focus so that I continuously create a waveform of light into sound, into light into sound, light into sound, sound into light back, that's creating a lastful memory in which I can cognitively understand the nature of our evolving conversation.
Yeah. So we can say then that thought is dependent on words and not the other way around. Or let's say thought is stimulated by words, but not dependent.
Yes, but some words are not stimulating. Some words are confusing. They're used misplacement, like when somebody babbles like President Trump. Or is a conversational terrorist that just is going to bring up emotional subject matters that takes away from the focus of what you're trying to get to.
Yeah, which is quite a powerful, you know.
Right, which is their avoidance mechanism, is stopping their consciousness from being a part of the thought. And the programs are running the thought language, not the consciousness.
Is that a choice, or is that?
How many people have you argued with that you know they're not talking to their consciousness, or they're talking to the programs?
Yeah.
And they're well-versed programs.
Yeah. It's the program taking over. It's
the program taking over.
Yes, and that is actually quite obvious when that happens. Right. Okay, cool. So, maybe to say there's Alice in Wonderland, they mentioned in the book too, because Alice in Wonderland, there are so many, stories in there which make, again, really not much sense. And it's more just syntax.
Allegory. Now we're talking allegory and metaphor that uses parts of myth, but allows the nature of the rules of disbelief and belief and suspension of belief. When we go to read a children's story, there's a different form of suspension of belief than we would use for television, which allows a different form of pattern recognition so that allegory relates, or allegory or any of that relates to a greater subject matter of learning what the message behind the story is.
Okay.
That's 3 tiers of thoughts that are going on. Like Little Red Riding Hood and the 3 bears, it's really about not stealing and not getting caught, and the bears are going to eat you, right? But then there's the 3rd tier of understanding the allegory and metaphor of the story.
Okay. So it can be quite challenging to read a book like that and, wanting to just dismiss it instead.
Right. You take a person that's from deep into Russia, and they don't know any of our allegories and metaphors and stories, and you give them to that, they're like, what the fuck?
Exactly.
Totally like, what the fuck? What is this? Okay.
So that leads me to the question, let's just jump to that question right away, is how do you actually translate language? Because what makes sense, I mean, I've been, being a native German speaker, you can't literally translate into English, and the other way around. In other languages, it's even more difficult.
So now you're looking at the mathematical journey of structure, where this intonation combined with this form of starting and stopping of the nasal or unnasal process, where you have to master the body's enunciation conjugation journey. And there's a mathematical formula. Everybody has trouble learning this language because it's about mastering the nose, the tongue, the throat, and how the innate body language of each language affects the intonation journey.
The lips too, isn't it? The lips.
Yeah, all of that is a micro journey into understanding how fluent energy becomes fluent energy when all those pieces and parts are working together.
So let's talk a little bit about the mechanics then.
Okay.
The mechanics, of creating words, creating sound. As you're mentioning, the tongue, and you mentioned the lips and the nose and everything. And I think in this book, even he started talking about the lungs, how you create a sound, how you create the word.
Right. Like Japanese have a lot more deep lung action going in them. That's why a lot of times English people perceive Japanese people as angry when they're actually in a loving state.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? And the same with German. It's because it's the way they accentuate and staccato their language, followed by a fast breath language.
Exactly.
Unless it's a high German process. Okay.
So you basically, what I remember is you basically not suspend the breath, but you change the dynamic of your breath. You take more oxygen in. You get the breath from the lungs into the trachea, the larynx, the vocal flops or cords, whatever you want to call it there. And then it starts interacting with the different layers of the tongue, which is quite interesting. Just talking about
so the force in which the lungs also creates a hollow whistling sound that the tongue can manipulate, that the larynx can manipulate, and that the nose can manipulate to make intonation resonance with the lung. There are certain words we accentuate. We don't even know that the sound is resonating from our lungs to our nose.
I know.
And the French do it all the time.
And you know what? This great example he was giving, because I was working with tennis players. I used to coach tennis players. And think of the tennis players that making that sound. It's when they close down the lung to actually start doing their what's it called? Serve.
Yeah.
When the sound comes out, so that connection between sound and closing off the lungs.
So the subtleties of even the way the wind from your lungs is being used is integral into the language.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those mechanics is what makes learning a new language difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get over learning how to talk fluently in a language with confidence, the mechanical parts all start working together. Yeah,
it's, for instance, I think the nasal, use is not so used in German or if you speak Latin, which is no longer spoken really, but more in the South American languages, they have much more use of the nasal.
Portuguese. Like Portuguese is so much more nasally than French.
Yeah. Interesting. So, actually, I was going to ask you something about the tongue, because, we always talk about the heart being the first organ in the fetus of the mother's womb created, and then the second organ is the tongue, right?
Yep. Second organ is the tongue. There's a reason why. So that the heart has an opportunity to take the vibration direct from the heart and send it to the tip of the tongue, so that heart vibration is the basis of our language.
How cool is that? Now, he didn't say that in his book.
No. Well, he doesn't know. And also the tongue itself is emanating an energy that we only perceive in light.
Uh-huh.
Just like there is a Morse code, the position and placement of the tongue and how it touches the teeth creates a piezoelectric effect on the teeth, which then creates an electromagnetic effect greater in the body, which is all this unseen energy of expression.
And this is also why people who had extensive teeth repairs and stuff like that changed their tonality and everything afterwards. After my jet ski accident, I do know that not just the way it looked like, but also my tonality had changed, the resonance, I suppose. So it's very interesting.
That's why when I'm talking with a person, I could just tell by the electrical impulses coming in their tongue and how it affects the rest of their body, if they're really there or not. It's another part of the medical intuition journey. Determine program, self-created demon, internal demon, or external manipulating demon, because there's all different electromagnetic. The roof of your mouth has 3 plates to it, and those 3 plates determine how all the chi is spread over your body. If they're very tight and you have a sunk nasal passage, there's an occupying presence, even if it's part of yourself, that is taking away from your greater you to express.
Oh, wow. This is fascinating.
You should have learned about them in the Bowen method, the 3 plates in the roof of the mouth or craniosacral.
No, I don't. Not that I remember that, but I'm more fascinated what you just said in terms of you can actually perceive who is talking to you. Just by that.
Yes, because your sinus and those 3 plates create a vibration of completion of your expression. And you can tell if something's been hijacked, immediately it'll be in the roof of the mouth and the nasal passage, and how the tongue touches it.
Really? So this is probably also why we do a lot of, in Kundalini breathing, you're working with the mantras that touch a lot the inside of the mouth, the roof of the mouth and everything, to get everything into balance, I would assume.
Right. There's certain Tai Chi positions where the tongue and acupuncture and acupressure position, where the tongue has to be on the roof of the mouth to complete the circuit.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, so if you think about that, that's again outside in. We were talking at some stage in our Zooms, is how you actually work with your physical body has an impact on everything that's going on inside. It has an impact on the language too, so on resonance and everything. That's really interesting.
So Colleen is asking how fascinating, how can one clear the blockage? Craniosacral therapy with intraoral mouthwork, myofascial release with intraoral mouthwork, or knowing the various pressure points and energy well centers in the face itself, and understanding how the position of the nose influences absolutely everything. The sunken orbits that are sunk or back a little bit, those also determine all of your intonation, vibration, and language completion.
Yeah, we have a lot of work in the face, on the face, and the TMJ with the Bowen technique too. So that covers that too. Craniosacral and technique. Yeah. Good. So, do you want to say any more on the tongue thing? Are we done on this?
I could speak 3 years about the tongue nonstop, to tell you the truth. You just have to think of it like a Morse code device. When you're tapping the piece of metal, wherever it's tapping, the tongue is tapping in the roof or the inside of the mouth or the teeth, it's creating an electromagnetic signaling that our brain is perceiving as complete language or not.
And it's connecting to the heart.
Well, the heart is sending the language and the brain is receiving it. And that doesn't mean the brain is sending it back to the heart. That's the next part, is the triangle completed.
Yes. Okay, cool. Good. I've got written down here, phonetic perception is like a sixth sense bypassing auditory channels.
So is that from the book or is that from you?
No, that's from the book. But what I liked about it was, because watching a movie with subtitles, that's the context here. Okay. And how often does it happen when I don't do it a lot nowadays, but when I used to watch subtitles, you start actually thinking or, perceiving that you understand the language because you're reading the subtitles. Everything, there's no differentiation anymore. Everything just comes.
So that's actually the suspension of belief.
That's a suspension of belief. Okay, fantastic.
Okay. And when suspension of belief takes over in reading subtitles, are you actually understanding the language? No, because most of the time those subtitles are not actual correct translations. Very often, most of the time, they're only a 70% accurate translation.
Yes, but again, beyond the cognition here, you're getting the sense of what is being conveyed, right?
Well, the person who perceives the language can understand the emotions behind it. But if they don't know the raw mechanics, like once again, when a Japanese person is going, oh, no, that's not an anger position, but it's all too often perceived because the body takes a cultural perception where it can be perceived as aggressive energy.
Yes.
And then German, like I watch a lot of movies that are subtitled for different reasons. Sometimes I turn the subtitles off and I don't care what they're saying. I'm perceiving the actors and the emotion and the suspension of belief.
Yes, I used to do that too. It's so much fun. And you actually don't need to know, you know.
Right, I make my own words up.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually, I've got that down here. So how do different languages cause and challenge differences in the thoughts of the speakers? So that fits in there nicely. It's, you know, as we just said, you can just turn off the language and just make up the thoughts by yourself, you know, just going with a feeling. And
I would tell people to go and do that. Like go on Amazon Prime or one of those free movies that has subtitles there, and just make up what they're saying based off of the reaction you see in the characters reacting to the language.
Yes, and there is the time then too. I do remember. I mean, obviously, I learned English. You know, I was working internationally in Austria before I came over here. But then when I did come over here, because I was used to American English, and then coming to the UK, I was working with, obviously, with a mixed bag, you know, always. And what I did, I was like, every time a new word, I wrote it down and I learned it to just create your vocab and to increase your amount of words that you have. So there's a time for this, and then there's a time for just perceiving the language and the sound of the words.
Great. Can you put up the title of the book again? People are asking what's the title of the book.
Yeah, title of the book. Can you see? It's called Steven Pinker, The Language Instinct. And it's not easy, guys. It's tough to read. But it's creative. For me, it's a lot of ideas.
So there's another aspect that we want to touch on. Language is holographic also.
Okay.
So in this conversation there's stuff beyond the five senses, which is the holographic perception of the language being suspended in people's consciousness as they're processing it. There's some people that are processing it very fast, and other people's whose CPS are still trying to process minute 4, minute 7, minute 11, minute 25. And then when the show ends, it may take a day for them to catch up and process all of the stuff that's in the holographic perception.
Yes.
That creates a finality of a perspective of understood processed data.
Yes. But would that also go hand in hand with when you speak to somebody and they are very slow vibration talkers and you already know what they're saying? And it's like, get on with it because you already got the gist of all of it?
Yes. But then there are times that people who are slow processors, in the long run, it's like the rabbit versus the tortoise. The tortoise still wins at the end because they have a far deeper understanding of it because they don't allow themselves to be overwhelmed by the data.
Yes.
And overprocess something which will miss nuances. Yes,
that's a good point. See, there's always two sides to everything.
Well, polyhedron. There's many sides.
Polyhedron.
Square peg, polyhedron hole doesn't always work.
So going back to language and words and everything, so different cultures imposing different realities on our languages. So there's an example in there talking about the Eskimos apparently having so many words for snow, which apparently is not even true. But I quite like the concept of that, how the idiosyncrasies of a culture, you know, obviously impact on the languages.
Example, myth. So I've heard that story before that the Inuits have all the different language for snow. Well, we do too. Wet snow, hard snow, soft snow,
exactly.
Ice. Okay, we have different phrases. We just individuated words and combined phrases.
Yeah.
Versus something that's a language that can just say snow or snow. The, the change of intonation will change its whole meaning.
Yes. Okay, so the other,
which is the cultural idiosyncrasies of manipulating our emotional impact.
Yes. Well, I mean, you know, you can do so much. If you're a good conversationalist, you can, it's a manipulation of note. If you know.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with it either. Manipulation is not bad. If you're using it for the greater good as a win-win situation for both, why would you not do it?
Right. And then you use poetry, which is iambic pentameter or certain pentameters that create rhyming. And so what does that do?
Yeah. What? That goes straight into the not cognition, into the uncognition.
It's challenging your motor cortex, which is still a part of your cognition, to perceive an iambic pentameter or pentameter of rhyming that's going to create a body reaction of dopamine release.
I never thought of that. Okay.
It's intentionalized to get a body response out of it.
Really?
Mm-hmm. That's why poetic pentameters are so effective, like haiku. And most of the time they make no sense, but they mean a lot of sense to everyone else.
Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah. He also mentioned the Hopi language, which apparently was timeless. Timelessness of the Hopi language.
That's because they didn't have the word time wasn't in their language, so there was no time tense in any of their speech. Everything was now.
He did refute it a couple of pages afterwards, but I was just thinking, think about it. If you grow up with the language, there is no time in it. Well, you have a completely different perception.
There are many indigenous languages that still exist that have no perception of time in the language at all. And there's actually a word for it, for that type of language.
What was it? I think I didn't write it down.
The movie Arrival, that talked about a beings coming here outside of time. They talked about that.
Timelessness, doesn't matter.
It changes the syntax and everything. Hold on one second. I'm gonna find it here in a second.
Because it's quite interesting to look at that, how language impacts on our lives, you know, and everything we do and everything we do, yeah.
So the movie portrayed the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis in 3 different ways. The hard version, which is portrays in the physiological alteration after learning the language. The intermediate version depicted in the barriers of translation between the aliens and humans, and the possibility of misinterpretation due to entirely different languages, bodies, and worlds. And the soft version, which is reflected in the different courses, but in the same language, as specific linguistics, mathematics, military officials, shedding light on the widely unaccepted theory that has numerous implications that mostly centered around the importance of language and communication. So it's it's talking about a language that actually uses no form of time behind it. Mm-hmm. Oh, as Robert is giving us the behind the scenes look.
I can't read this. but you know, this is actually an interesting thing. How do aliens, extraterrestrials or Martians, whatever, how did they perceive our language? Is it all the same for them?
No, it's radically different. We are technically analog speakers who are trying to achieve dual process, being an analog and a digital thinker simultaneously, where a lot of the off-world species are no longer ones and zeros and ones and twos. They're 30 to 90 to 10,000. So they can think from many different states of being and perspective, which allows them to have a greater understanding of the unlimited point of view. And as we are coming out of the infancy of our understanding of the unlimited point of view, and that our language can be multidimensional in basis and still be expressive on many dimensions of perception. So they're waiting for us to come out of our limitation, which our language imposes on us, because the global narrative doesn't allow the language to evolve into a multidimensional thinking capacity.
So how would we have to change our language? How can we do this?
What is emojis doing right now to us?
Okay, so no use of words. Or
it's not limiting to the 26 letters that we talk about. How many times have you heard me say in many shows, where do we go to add a 27th letter to the alphabet? Nowhere. They don't want you to have another one. How would the world change if we added another letter to the alphabet? We add words to the dictionary all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What would a new letter look like? How would we perceive it? How would the 4 generations in existence now adapt to that process?
Something spiral.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or another emoji. You just start adding the smiley face to the language.
Exactly.
Okay. So instead of saying in a book, the character smiles at the other, you see the emoji smiling, looking at the other character, followed by the words you want to say.
So why don't we start talking to our children, because our children are amazing. They always keep changing those language. Every generation changes the language, right?
Yep.
They do this anyway.
I do it all the time in text. I put emoji symbols to modify what I'm saying or replace the actual words.
Mm-hmm. I use numbers at times. Numbers for, to and my daughter, when I think Emma, she's 21, I mean, she sends me all sorts of, little scribbles. I'm thinking, what is this, So she's probably doing it already and I have no idea.
Again, that's the previous generations trying to understand the modern generation changing of the language,
yes.
Which comes to the term you've heard me say a lot, the colloquial now.
Yes. And this is why this education system needs a radical rethinking and change, isn't it?
Well, the colloquial now includes the myth that the modern generations know, perceive, and use. But then there are the colloquial now is ever evolving. New myths are created all the time.
Yes. Which impact, obviously, on the language and everything.
And there are many people who don't know the new myths. Okay, so, there are a lot of people stuck thinking DVDs will save the world. DVDs have been done since 2008. Done. There's no future market for them. And then there's the people still trying to figure out CDs.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So if we all do contribute to that in our own lives and worlds, start adding emojis or start adding, numbers or different, then we can actually start creating that multidimensional language.
We do it all the time.
Yeah, but let's do it from a more cognitive perspective.
Make your own language.
Yeah, make your own language. Why don't we just do something like that? Get a homework going with making your own language up.
People do it all the time. People make their own little coded language all the time. Kids do it all the time.
Okay. Good.
Now, you can also do a language, what are called linguistic samples. That's why people talk in quotes all the time. They can have whole conversations just in quotes.
Yes. What is that all about?
That's the modern kids using the power of myth and the power of quote to create intentionality without the actually linguistically saying it. We do it in text all the time.
I know people like that. They're not even kids. Yes.
Right. They're just movie quotes over and over and over again.
Yes. Yes. Amazing. Interesting. So thinking in pictures versus, because I do remember learning that the subconscious would process everything in pictures rather than in words or thoughts. How do we process our thoughts? In pictures? In
everybody processes thoughts differently, but your parents imprint upon you psychically how they perceive. And then there are plenty of people who can taste the color yellow or see the vibration of sound. Okay? That there's kinesthetic reversals that touch has taste to it.
So there's actually something I want to ask you here, is because does how we see colors determine how we learn words?
Yes and no. Everyone perceives color different, though. Did you know that like a third of the world is colorblind? Literally a third of
Yeah,
the
I heard
world.
something to that
But
effect.
this comes back to my statement about people being able to perceive the 7 colors of time. The soul itself, the DNA skin suit may be able to perceive more, but the soul itself hasn't evolved enough or has some form of blockage seeing the 7 colors.
Yes, and we got 50 to go, isn't it?
Correct. And the 7 colors have time related. The 8th color has a different form of time related to it. So when you're having a level of color blindness, it is also a limitation to the perception of time. But it is not always a limitation. There are some form of color blindness or color misperception that give you a unique perception of other colors of time we can't perceive.
And taking this back to languages, I've read that Latin, for instance, they don't do gray and brown. They don't use the word gray and brown. And I think the Navajo, that Mexican language, does have no word for green and blue separate.
Correct.
Quite interesting how the colors and all that.
So, Martina, you're an artist, right?
Yeah, okay.
So ever use the color wheel?
I do black and white at the moment, but yes, keep going.
You know, the artist color wheel.
Yes.
So if anybody wants to start actually training themselves, go onto Google and type in high quality color wheel, download the image and send it to your printer. And if you have a really good printer, you'll be able to see the subtleties of many hundreds of different colors at the artistic level of perception. And then you take that color wheel with you like you would carry your wallet everywhere. Okay. If you have a phone and you can download it onto your phone, great, but make sure it's a high quality digital phone. Preferably on paper, because there's a different kinesthetic perception of color on paper. The way the inks are actually combined versus the way the inks are combined in the actual image and digital image, which has a light behind it, which you're perceiving your eyes differently. Use that color wheel to look at your reality like a color compass.
Give us an example.
Is that a red couch that you are sitting on? I want everyone to answer. Is that a red couch she is sitting on?
Yes. No.
Burgundy. Told you. Okay. What color shirt is she wearing? What color shirt is she wearing?
Oh. Yeah. Fascinating, huh?
What, the door to her left, what color is it? The wall behind her.
Oh God. Egyptian cotton.
Yes.
Anybody came up with that?
Egyptian cotton.
Gotcha.
Okay. Once again, everyone perceives different. Like it's the old saying when a police officer comes to find out and there's 20 people that witnessed a crime, there's 20 different perceptions that don't make sense.
Yeah.
Everyone perceives everything different. How does it, like size perception? So the robber was 5'5", but the next person says, no, he was gigantic. He was 6'2".
Yeah, different filters, different perceptions. Okay, so I got a question here. A concept is unimaginable and therefore nameless. No, it's a question. Is a concept that is unimaginable and therefore nameless.
No, because that doesn't apply spirituality of going to the edge of the unknown and making it known. So that's one of those stupid science limitation questions.
Okay, another one. A concept.
Hold on 1 second. People were asking before, what do you do with the color wheel? Take it and ask your friends, what color do you see?
Yes.
Do a cognitive perception color test. Put the color wheel up wherever you go. And what color really is this? And then people ask, what the fuck, why are you doing it? I'm studying color art.
Yeah.
That's it. Great conversation piece.
Yes, and do not get involved in argumentations what color it is, because I have got myself many times involved in that.
Me too.
No, this is yellow. This, what the fuck? It's green. No, it's blue. It's, don't go there. Just let them have whatever they have and take it as an interesting point of view.
So of that world, that 1/3 has color blindness. A quarter of those colorblind people will actually have a totally different definition from a color. What you and I would perceive as blue might be red to them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's very common. Very, 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 very common.
So that has also an impact then on how they express themselves through their life.
Correct. And this is another reason I'm able to perceive people on a psychic level when they're speaking to us and their colors are coming back going, that's not normal.
So you can see colors when you speak to people?
Oh, yeah. Whole swirl of everything. Yeah.
That's different to the auras. You're not seeing the aura. You're seeing everything, the words and the light.
Well, light workers are bastardized the term aura because they want to simplify it and make you think you can understand it instantly when you can't. Your aura is an ever-evolving process that our language affects and changes, our blocks affects and changes, and there's a series of patterns within patterns that determine why the colors are there or not there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's an adaptive system. Your aura is an adaptive system that can also be used in a nefarious way. There are plenty of people that can make their aura seem one way when they're thinking another way, or it's active deception.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Why do you think lying works? Okay.
Okay.
So many people ask, well, how come a psychic know they weren't being lied to? Very carefully. Mm-hmm. It's understanding the perceptions of color. And does that person believe what they're saying in the moment? That's how they beat lie detector tests.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In that moment, they can make themselves believe they're not doing harm.
Interesting.
Camouflage and the manipulation of camouflage for active deferment and deterrent and other negative reasons.
There's so much to all of that, isn't it? It's just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and if the stupid lightworker commercial community would stop bastardizing the color teachings, people would understand why lying works. And they'd have a much better chance of perceiving it in the moment. Jade Julia says she can hear lies. Right. You can hear it. It doesn't give you the accuracy of the lie, but you know it's a lie in the moment.
Yes, I can perceive them. I'm more like, yeah. No, it's interesting. Very interesting.
Right. We all have a bullshit detector. Sometimes it needs an update, though. There are certain people whose capacity to broadcast true bullshit is good.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of trust in yourself to know what you know, to know what you're perceiving is correct for you, obviously, and also not to go into polarity and charge with it, you know.
Correct. Which is the main
observer.
Which is the main influencers of why lying works, especially in the con artist game.
Yeah.
They're manipulating your own charge and polarity and how you fall into your own self-victimhood traps.
Yeah. Okay, so do you want to have another one on go on this? A concept is nameless and therefore unimaginable.
But that isn't true.
That's the opposite now what I said earlier on. Concept is nameless and therefore unimaginable.
Yeah, it's not true.
It's not true.
It's a double negative statement. It limits the unlimited point of view of having a perception at all. It's what I call an absolute question answer.
Right.
Which science does all the time to confuse itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's neither a yes or a no, therefore science empirical data makes it a no.
Mm-hmm. So obviously why I'm bringing this up is because we're talking about language, you know, and concepts and meaning, you know, using
you name it in your mind, but you label it with language. Your mind already perceives it, the language doesn't have language for it. We run into this in psychic data all the time. Let me figure out the language for it.
Yes. Well, you say that all the time, actually, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't have the words for certain things.
And I might have to use allegory. I might have to use metaphor. I might have to use myth, allegory, and metaphor to make a frame of reference that people can begin to perceive through language.
Yeah.
That's why the name it to claim it system is so potent and powerful.
Yes. And that brings us to the next thing, talking about language as a manipulation, but not necessarily for a win-win situation, but actually using words and language to distort and misinterpret what's actually going on. So the misuse of words and how words have actually been transformed into something that is no longer really what they used to be.
Correct. And the dating environment is the classic example where words are manipulated to get an outcome, both good, bad, and indifferent.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So give us an example on this one here.
Let's say in a first meeting scenario, you use a pickup line, or you're going to be authentically you.
Yeah. Pickup line work, guys. Don't even go there.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. It's all about, is the person open to the perception that I'm having a pickup line? And that's how this first perception, do I open the door or not? The receiving person of the pickup line.
Well, I close.
Sometimes it's off the wall, stupid, crazy, and it makes you laugh.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Could break the ice, couldn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I do this all the time. What are the best light worker pickup lines?
Guys, give us some. I don't have any.
Do I see my light in you? You must be my reflection.
I don't have this. Have we got any good ones? No.
They're still processing a lot more. You shine like a bright light. Yeah, you shine like a bright light. Is your name Rainbow?
Oh, God. It gives me goosebumps, you know, but not in a good way. Not in a good way.
I see your aura and my aura going for a walk.
Staying in a neutral perspective here.
Hold on, what was the one Robert got? Hold on.
The namaste.
You seem like the kind of person who doesn't like to pick up. Who seem like the kind of person who doesn't like pickup lines. Great pickup line.
Yeah, got my attention there.
I see your 7-colored rainbow, baby. Your aura and my aura can make beautiful music.
Oh, that's actually quite nice in a way.
Okay. See, they do work. They're based off of the receiver's perception of it.
That's kind of sweet. Right.
Okay. There's how subtle manipulation is the bad version of good. I'm being bad to be good, and good to be bad. Well, they all go back and forth. You're not bad evil. You're doing the badness, which makes you good.
Yeah, it's a bit of a play, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always a play. But that's how the
really.
subtle manipulation in the dating world can easily be seen. How when you're just in a debate and conversation and somebody throws Trump is king or Trump is the savior, you realize that's conversational terrorism. And conversational terrorism is a whole different perspective because the person using the conversational terrorist is out of control. And they use it to take control of a scenario.
Yes. I'm familiar with that too, actually. But then you just, you have a choice to engage with it or to walk away or, you know.
Right.
That's the one. So I'm interested now to talk about, you know, the terrorism, the conversational terrorism, which is much more subtle not so in your face, where we're using the language as an ultimate, technology for thought control.
So subtle is gaslighting. Conversational terrorism is aggressive and upfront. Your point of view means nothing. I'm going to bring this subject up and blow it up with charge and polarity and deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and also talking about specific vocab that has been constructed, to use in a global narrative through the channels of the media, through, and all of that, to subliminally impact on people's minds.
Which is directly looking for their triggers. Okay?
Yeah. So serving the certain words that serve the meaning of a certain party, if you wish, and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And where we are not aware enough often to appreciate what's actually going on.
Whenever I find myself in a conversation with conversational terrorists, you know how you deal with them? Don't allow their charge and polarity to stick. You let them go and say, have you spoken your word? And if they keep going over and over, go, now you're just being a dick. Click, walk away.
Right.
When they're, it has to go right back to them. And if you're choosing to be a dick, you're not choosing to honestly debate. And if you're not choosing to honestly debate with me, you're a conversational terrorist. Grow the fuck up.
Yeah.
Okay?
Could you be a bit
walk away.
More specific there? Okay, so I'm thinking of words like revenue enhancement, aka taxes, So just also using specific words to make it feel like it's not really what's happening. Like there's another word I've written down was non-retention. We're going into non-retention. Basically means we're firing your ass, that type of stuff, All these... And the need word, where we say I need, and it actually implies lack. How many times, you need, and it implies lack.
Correct, unless the perceiver's a narcissist. And then the need words are, oh, I have you trapped.
Yes. Okay, so you're coming from the speak perspective, so this doesn't even resonate with you there. Okay.
No, it does. It's still based off of who's receiving the words.
Yes.
How they're going to, there's no cookie cutter response to that.
Yes, no. But, okay, so I think what I want to do is raise awareness of that this is out there and just be aware of what
people are aware of it, but they don't do much about it.
Mm.
And you've got to be able to do in the moment and recognize in the moment is how you stop habit patterns from controlling your language.
Mm. So, also like using the word free, how the word free has been bastardized, over time. Freedom was all about intellectual freedom, political freedom, and all of that. And now it's more like if you get a freebie somewhere, it's just completely taken out of context almost in a way, or change the meaning if you wish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, free also lessens the information.
Yes, that too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Good. What else have we got?
I want to touch again on the nature of conversational terrorists because it's a worldwide sickness right now. Now we all know different examples of conversational terrorists. The ones who are going to insert their view, which is the only view they're allowing. And whenever you say anything different to their view, they're going to continue to blow up the conversation to own it. So their point of view is the only point of view. That's the nature of a conversational terrorist. There are times where, as somebody who's very strategic in their conversational terrorism, they use it to disrupt your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to learn to not take on what they're saying to disrupt your thoughts. Cognify what it is they're saying and spit back to them something that isn't charge and polarity, but a reversal format.
Mm-hmm. And one way of doing that is starting a sentence and not finishing it.
Because the conversational terrorist is interrupting you, and that's the bomb that they're using is interruption.
You can also look at it from the conversational terrorist is actually using that technique in starting a sentence, not finishing it, starting the next sentence, not finishing it, because the listener is starting to go into confusion too.
Babble, because oftentimes the person that's conversational terrorist in between bombs is just babbling and making no sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it adds to the confusion in the conversation, and then he hones in with the specific. So using the confusion and then going in with the chain sentence.
So then there are pure ad hominem attacks that use conversational terrorism to thwart any form of conversation. And when you find yourself in that nature, you have a variety of choices. But the main choice is to shut your energy field down and increase your light manyfold so they can't suck your life force out. Because that's what they're trying to do at that moment. They are harvesting energy off of you. And if you see the mechanics of that and you brighten your light and it turns poisonous to them because they can't handle that form of high frequency light. And that's learning how to manipulate the energy of a conversation in such a way that isn't stepping on anyone's journey, but protecting your journey.
Yeah, because you're doing it beyond cognition. This is like the part of the vibration harmony frequency where you out vibrate them on an energetic level.
Without allowing them to harvest your vibration.
Exactly. Because you're sovereignly, sound and fortified.
Which is an internal fortification that doesn't have a body language of revelation to the others.
No, absolutely. It's almost the opposite, where you're just like completely sound from the inside out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there are times in my scenario where I'm perceiving the conversational terrorist as a complete harvesting, energy manipulating being with a demonic presence of self-possession of their own internal demons inside of them. And I will make statements that will nullify the demon inside, literally. I'll make them have to repeat something I said that was so difficult to cognify that the soul has to come in for a moment and cognify it.
Yeah, we talked about that. So that's the repeat after me, where you bring in the soul for that split moment that it can actually chuck the programs out.
Right. But there are times when I'm not reading a person, I'm just in a conversation and they're trying to intentionally harvest at me. I can put a set of words together that programs do not compute, revert, oh shit, I'm fucked. Yeah.
Yeah. We were also saying earlier on, you can do that through laughter.
Yeah.
But
laughter can be avoidance technique also.
Yes. I'm talking as a tool to actually split up the.
Yes. That's why comedy. That's why dark comedy works.
Yes.
Okay. So Sean was saying that could infuriate people. If that's infuriating, you're winning something.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's what you. And it's not that you want that, but I mean that obviously
it means you've reversed the frequency enough in them that they're eating themselves up with infuriation. Because there's nothing they think of. They're speechless for the moment. That's what really infuriating is meaning. Now, Julia is asking about astral hacking. Yes, that happens too. There are times that people are actually astrally hacking you with their gaslighting nature, trying to steal your potential of motion, and that's an astral hack. Gaslighting is more astral hacking. And then there's the astral minefields that can be set up by conversational terrorists where you're thinking later, I should have said this, I should have said this. And the next time I meet, I'm going to say this. You've just fallen into their astral minefield of taking on all the charge and play. Next time I see you, I'm going to say that.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So what's better, to have high vibration or frequency? Neither. You have to know what the nature of you are in the moment. So one is not greater than the other. They're all equal. Donna, how do you stop astral hacking? Sovereign in the body. practice daily ritual, ceremony that gives you weekly hindsight and foresight, that evolves to a monthly and yearly position in which you've maintained a high enough frequency, vibration, and harmony that astral hacking and random words and conversational terrorists can't lower your frequency to their level and allow them to harvest you. Maintaining who you are.
Stay in the body long enough in order to maintain that conversation, whatever it is.
A conversational terrorist is trying to kick you out of your body.
Exactly. And understanding what it actually looks like, what it means when you're in your body and when you're not. You know, I mean, that's the basic how it starts. You start looking at your conversations that you're having and starting to perceive, am I talking to the program now, or am I actually talking to the person? And what's the difference, you know?
I can do this right away, recognize if it's the person or the program, or the program losing power and the person comes in here and there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting, but it's practice. It's practice like everything else, you know. And people who do like the linguistics, who do like connecting with people and talking to people and just looking at the dynamics, you know, that's a brilliant way of starting to gain a little bit more insight.
All right, so I want to talk a different side here. I want to talk about the people who can delude themselves into their own belief with their own words. How they can talk themselves into a fake truth.
Okay.
We've all met people like that. What do you think the mechanics around self-delusion is?
Not wanting to step into their authentic them, you.
What creating the delusion is a way of stepping into an authentic power of creation.
Yeah, it's an illusion. It's fake.
Is it to that person?
Oh, not to that person. Okay, fair enough. I hear what you're saying. It's a little bit that emanation, emulation teaching.
Where the word itself gets confused and emulation becomes emanation and emanation becomes emulation. And
it's also forcing a signature frequency match.
And once you have a forced signature frequency match, what happens? The universe is going to do whatever it can do to match that fake match to you. Why?
Exactly.
That's what you're showing you're ready for.
It's forced evolution. It takes you off the path of your authentic, you know, beingness.
Okay. Now, many of those people fall into the zone we can't help. So many people I've had to say, stop giving all of your data and information away to those that don't want to hear. The universe has a special plan for all those who are stuck in that state of self-delusion. Trust the universe. It knows a little bit more than us. Okay? And stop wasting your effort on those that are so self-deluded that there's nothing you can say to change them in the moment.
Yeah, there's also the element of needing to be needed, wanting to be heard, you know, obviously having a huge program, still programs running that, you know, don't allow them to acknowledge their own authenticity, the projections of still childhood and all that sort of stuff. It all comes down back to doing the work, isn't it?
Doing authentic work. Too often, people delude themselves into believing I've done the work. Okay, I run into it in the show all the time. And then you ask them, when's the last time you've done a contract revocation? A month. When's the last time you've done a fire ceremony? Never. When's the last time you've done a meditation? A year ago. Yet they've deluded themselves into thinking just because they have these documents in their frequency that that's actually doing.
Yeah. But then you have your parameters, you know, seeing have I done the work or not, because at some stage if you have done the work authentically and properly, and there's always more work to be done, we understand that, there's a matter of, you know, you actually starting to create abundance and live in joy and actually be
seeing the victories.
Seeing the victories, yes, as you always say, acknowledging the victories, counting them.
Okay. And then once you make that a ritualized part of yourself, seeing the victories, You then have a chain of events that you've created all on your own that can't be diluted. Unless you go into what I call super delusion. And what is super delusion? The aliens are going to come down and save us. The currency is going to be revalued tomorrow. Or any of the other great conspiracy theories that you put your hope, you smoke your hopium with.
I think you can also add, once you actually started counting your victories and you're acknowledging all of that, that's when you actually start committing to yourself, and commitment becomes an energy that you understand.
That a lot of people deny commitment. I can do it. I can multitask and do all this stuff and not be committed in doing and pull my toe out of the water anytime instead of being into it head deep.
Yeah. Commitment and closing the back doors we were talking about the other day. But also there's one thing, you know, not wanting to be the chosen one. Is such an important one to look at. You know, you can't just sit back and wait for somebody to see your greatness or to see your kindness or whatever it is. You've got to choose it for yourself. Only then others can start seeing it. They might be able to see it, but they will not, you know, approach you. So stop wanting to be the chosen one and actually start fucking choosing yourself.
Right. Instead of being the chosen one, external source, you're choosing yourself.
Exactly.
And stop trying to share the hopium pipe with everyone you work with and everyone you talk with.
Yeah. Yeah. And as soon as you start doing that, you actually, it's almost like you become more visible to others too.
Who are the right signature frequency match.
Who are the right signature frequency match. Exactly.
Without forced cognition of it.
Exactly. And then you have your degrees of separation falling away, you know, all these people disappearing from your life and new people coming in.
That's right.
Yeah.
Forced cognition. A lot of people misperceive this concept. And I want to say that all too often, people on the spiritual path are trying to force cognition and trying to force processing. And as long as you're trying to force something that doesn't have enthusiastic effort behind it, you're actually deluding yourself into actually perceiving, doing, and actualizing it in yourself.
And frankly, it doesn't work. Yeah.
That's the self-delusion process.
Yeah, and if you're not aware of that, you're delusional, self-delusional, because there is an element of that. You know, I used to be that too. Mm-hmm. We've all been there. It doesn't work. You know, whatever you are putting a lot of effort into, it doesn't work because, you know, if you are the right signature frequency match to it, it should happen with ease, or it will happen with ease. You still to put the work in it. I'm not saying it's easy, but it happens with ease. That's when you know you are a match to it.
I can't tell you how many people say, I don't see nothing, therefore my spirituality is irrelevant, because they're already a match for it. Something they did in your life, and there's something missing in your life. And so most of the time, sight is not the first thing you have. Allowing the universe to give you the right experience. Before sight is the demanding, which is you're creating of this delusional field. If I don't see, it's not real. If I don't get immediate numerological data, it's not real for me.
But you see, it's learning about the different ways of perceiving. You can be a clairvoyant. You can be a
clairaudient.
What are the other clairs? The worst is when you are bloody claircognizant.
Yeah. Or clair precognizant.
Because it's like nothing is going to show you. You have to just trust that whatever comes to you is the thing.
Right. But because people are in the deluded sense, if I don't see it, it is not real, but they're having all this claircognitive stuff going on. And that is an actual, it's going to happen in front of you. And that's its validation, like a deja vu.
Guilty. Talking to myself, getting all these orders, you're just talking shit. No, it was good information. I just never, acknowledged it because I thought it had to come from somebody I see. I've been guilty of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's educating yourself what is out there. When I then heard, claircognizance, what is that? I'm thinking, oh my God, this is me. So here you go. Never judge yourself for anything.
Mm-hmm. Reading versus speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're reading, what are we doing?
Are we reading? What are we doing?
I'm going to put this to the audience also. This is the next philosophical topic of exploration here. When we're reading, I gave away some of it in the beginning of the show. When we're reading, what are we doing? And then there's another phase when we're reading out loud. What is it when we're just in our space, in our reading zone? What are we doing mechanically? Okay, I'll let you flow here for a minute, Martina.
No, I don't think there's big flow for me coming, but it's a conversion of light, I would say.
Okay, what if it's a very enthralling and story of joy and happiness that allows you to perceive many layers of the author's perception?
Yeah, it's you're reading, you're perceiving, you're feeling, you actually, all your senses are working as you're reading.
So let's say you're reading something and all of a sudden you start to cry from the subject matter. What's it doing?
It's triggering something. And now it's a light memory. You're decoding light memories as you're reading something.
Okay. Now what happens when we're reading out loud?
We are imprinting those memories. No, I don't know. Just tell us.
So why is it that so many people go to the contract revocations and can enunciate words 4, 5, 6, 10 times through a 2-page document? Because their shadow is stopping them, taking the clarity of the actualization of the language out.
Okay.
When we begin to read something out loud, it is a way to see and perceive all the different subtle programs of change within us that don't want change.
Okay. So we could also say we are coming, we're coming into the present moment. The I am's coming into the vagus nerve and throwing out all the programs.
In an attempt, yes.
Yeah, trying to at least, yeah. And through the voice, we are imprinting our I am into the vagus nerve.
Have you ever been so into a book you're reading and you realize you're not reading anymore? The words are existing in your head.
Suppose, yeah.
Okay. A lot of people are saying yes. It's a natural process of reading.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going beyond the words,
Mm-hmm.
and you're actually perceiving the whole page, even though you're reading word to word, letter to letter, line to line. And that's when people reach the superconsciousness stage where they can process very, very fast. Not superluminal, superconsciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so everyone can reach speed reading with speed comprehension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's the fastest you've ever read? The most favorite book, the fastest you've ever read?
You know, there's always a bit of a programming that comes up for me because I'm not a native. It's not my. I always get stuck on when there's a word that I really like. I have to write it down. So that always, slows me down because then I go cognitive and I want to know what the word is. I need to write it down and that.
Okay. I've read a 300-page book in like 6 hours. Okay. I've probably read longer books than that. I just don't remember them. Okay. And I took a few speed reading courses, but those were just nothing really. They were just taught you how to comprehend faster.
I've watched Lost in a week. Does that count?
No, it's not reading. Okay.
Okay.
So everyone here so far, a lot of people are going, yes. Well, everyone should have that experience once per month because it will train your mind to think and comprehend vastly different and normal conversational situations as well as educational scenarios. And this is one of the reasons our dry reading textbooks are so miserable for learning with.
So is there a particular literature that you would suggest? It's more like stories, fiction, something like that, that really allows you to just let go of everything. Because most of the books I read, there's something I need to learn. So I need to let that go, isn't it?
You need to let that go. That's your limitation.
Yeah.
Again, everyone's genre is going to be different of what activates something inside them to want to go to that space where they're going to devour the book.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times as a kid I went to the bookstore, their library, got a book, and I couldn't put it down. And I'm talking like 3 o'clock in the morning, tears coming down my eyes. I got to finish. Okay. And sometimes devouring 3, 4, 5 books a week.
Yeah. So mix up the literature then.
Allowing the mixing up of the literature. There are a lot of people that simply they only want to educate themselves, but they don't want to entertain themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Martina, I think we're at the perfect point. We're going to end the show. I have a super busy day today, but I want everyone to process what we've talked about and said. So you're going to be coming on a regular basis here. And next time you come on, we're going to ask people to do some homework now. Okay? And the type of homework I want you to do is to read out loud. Oh boy, I've asked you to do this a bunch of times and to record yourself. But pick up any book by any writer and pick out any page and read out loud an entire page of another person's stuff, record it. And then you perceive what you've just written and paraphrase what that you have just written, what you have just read, and then read out the paraphrased version or an expanded version. Why am I asking you to do this? Cognition control, cognition and processing. Can you do this with the contract revocations? Yes. You're going to paraphrase it and then expand upon it. This is going to teach you how to get into an everyday flow. There's the written that creates the coding in your mind that allows you to go to a flow. Learning how to paraphrase something you've comprehended unpacks and uncodes a lot more information you can go on the flow with. Who will do the homework? Ha 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 ha. All right, Martina, you want to give a way for people to get a hold of you? And you have your Earth Nouveau meeting tomorrow at 5 o'clock GM time?
Yeah, GM time +1, UK time, earthnouveau.com. The link is on it now, so you can just go on to that one. And we explore consciousness there with the Earth Nouveau team. We're going to talk about vagus nerve and programs tomorrow. And my website is synchholistic.co.uk. So
can you type those into the in there? And for everyone, Martina has a Facebook page, and there's an Earth Nouveau thing. And yes, it's open to everyone. Her classes, her thing is open to everyone.
Yes.
All right, Robert, take us away. We'll be back this coming Thursday.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Cheers, bye.
Each different bubble of reality is true. A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma. Nudge, nudge. It's the Holy Grail. Improvise. Mysterious. It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.